Welcome to the Delmarva Almanac. Each week we connect you to the best of Delmarva. I'm your host, Dana Kester McCabe. With Halloween just a few days away, it's that time of year when we indulge in scary stories. Delmarva has many ghostly legends chronicled in books and now by tour guides across the region. We also have a small history of witchcraft. Here in America, our colonial laws against witchcraft go back to British King James I, who set severe penalties for anyone who practiced what was called the dark arts. It was a felony to make a pact with the devil or to cast a spell or curse. When English colonists reached our shores, they found the shamanistic practices of the native peoples here were what they considered generally benign superstitions, but witchcraft nonetheless. The Nanacoke Indians were known to be expert herbalists, famous for their love charms. They were also rumored to be proficient poisoners who supposedly could wipe out a whole community with a single dose of their diabolical concoctions. Nanacoke shamans who practiced benevolent white magic were essentially doctors dispensing folk medicine. Those who were practitioners of black magic were known as night travelers, since their rituals were usually accomplished after sunset. These were seen as evil beings who did not keep company with the rest of the tribe. It was said that the only way to be sure that a Nanacoke witch was dead was if they were buried with the clay jars that they stored their potions in. I didn't find any record of native people in our region being charged with witchcraft during the colonial era, though there were a couple of poisoning cases. At the same time, witch trials in European countries and their New World colonies led to imprisonment, torture, and many gruesome deaths, mostly of women and girls. The first witch trials in Maryland and Virginia actually happened just offshore at sea. Women on 4 different ships bound for our region were tried and hung as witches. The ship's crews believed that these women caused the dangerous weather they had encountered on their journey across the Atlantic. The first of these was a woman named Mary Lee, who was hung shipboard for witchcraft in 1654. She was followed by Elizabeth Richardson on board another ship called the Sarah Arcte. One of Elizabeth's fellow passengers on that voyage, George Washington's great-grandfather John Washington, was so appalled by the despicable act he witnessed that he brought charges with the colonial authorities against the ship's captain, Edward Prescott. Prescott blamed the incident on a subordinate and refused to attend his own trial, claiming he had more pressing business, the baptism of one of his children. He was able to get away with that because women in those days were only seen as chattel under the supervision of their husband or some other man. Elizabeth was likely an indentured servant with no one to defend her rights. In 1662, Lord Cecilius Calvert ordered each Maryland county to appoint 4 men to investigate charges of witchcraft and sorcery in their districts. Potential sentences included branding, enslavement to Lord Calvert, loss of land, cutting off a limb, and even death. But by the time the Salem witch trials had caused a panic about satanic activity in New England during the 1690s, the governments on Delmarva had already become a little more enlightened. In fact, mid-Atlantic colonials accused of witchcraft did not wait to be tried for the crime. They sued their accusers for slander. Since most of those defendants were women, they usually had to have their husbands or some other man bring the matter to court for them. But it was a remarkable early step for women's rights to have testimony in their defense taken and believed. Magistrates wanting to prevent the madness they saw playing out further north made clear by their rulings that unless a plaintiff could actually prove that witchcraft was employed by a defendant, they would be held financially liable for their accusations. Many of those making the charges were in fact themselves women. In 1687, in Old Somerset County, Samuel Collins brought a suit on behalf of his wife against John and Catherine Robbins. Catherine was accused of telling people that Collins' wife had bewitched animals, causing them to be sick. Collins claimed the slander had put his family in danger and had caused them to lose money when their livestock would not sell. He won his suit. John and Catherine Robbins had to pay the Collins family restitution and submit to probation. I didn't find any stories about anyone here on Delmarva who was tried, convicted, and executed for being a witch. The last witch trial ever held in Maryland was, however, a Delmarva resident named Virtue Viol from the town of Plain Dealing in Talbot County. In 1715, she was sent to trial in Annapolis after a quarrel with her neighbor, Eleanor Moore. They were both older and unmarried. Eleanor said that Virtue had cursed her tongue, making her mute. Virtue was acquitted of all charges. Several decades later, another woman from the town of Plain Dealing named Katie Coburn was rumored to be a witch. She was an indigent, elderly woman who had been allowed to live in a decrepit old shack on the edge of a wealthy plantation. People feared her because she had some sort of deformity. They claimed she gave people the evil eye. Long after her mysterious disappearance and presumed demise, there were rumors of her ghost haunting the area. The laws concerning witchcraft were updated in the period following the Revolutionary War. They no longer referred to the practice of witchcraft, but to the pretense of it. This made occult activities, such as conjuring and fortune-telling, acts of fraud rather than heresy. The penalty was public whipping and a fine of up to $100. Belief in folklore about witches continued for a long time here. People used rituals and charms to ward off evil. There was a late 19th century legend that a man in Dorchester County died when a witch turned him into a horse and rode him all night long. It was said that clay was found under his finger and toenails. This was supposedly the witch's revenge for the man refusing to let her borrow his horse. In 1892, two lady fortune-tellers in Wilmington were charged with witchcraft after customers reported being conned out of their money. In 1904, in Sussex County, a man was charged with practicing witchcraft and sentenced to be whipped at the pillory. The Delaware legislature banned this form of punishment the following year. In 1950, another Wilmington fortune-teller was charged with witchcraft for charging someone an exorbitant amount of cash to rid them of a supposed curse. The judge dropped the witchcraft charge after the state was ridiculed in the national press about the case. By 1955, witchcraft as a crime was one of several obsolete laws purged from Delaware statutes. Journalists continued to have some fun at the state's expense, saying witchcraft was now legal in Delaware. The state also drew unwanted satire in 2010 when Delaware U.S. Senate candidate Christine O'Donnell made a tongue-in-cheek TV ad saying that she indeed was not a witch. This was in reference to an unrelated admission on a television show that when she was a teenager she had been interested in the occult. Like many counterculture activities, witchcraft probably has been practiced in secret all through Delmarva's history. And in fact, witchcraft is now known by many modern practitioners as Wicca, which is a revival and modernized version of the pagan earth religions of Northern Europe. Whether you like your Halloween witches scary and riding broomsticks, or nobly honoring nature with ancient Celtic harvest rituals, I hope your Halloween is a happy one. To find out more about this topic, visit our website, delmarvaalmanac.com/history. Well, that's all for this edition of the Delmarva Almanac. Be sure to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, and next week join us to learn more about our local culture and get connected to our natural wonders. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, and our underwriters for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. If you'd like to become an underwriter for this program, visit delmarvaalmanac.com/support. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.